50th anniversary of Channel Television. Now, Channel Television wasn't always the popular TV show it is today. In fact, it had humble beginnings, much like many of the other channels. Now I hand you over to one of my colleagues.
Hi, I'm Laurent Sagers. Around the years of 1965, everything was shot in black and white film. The cameras were of Bolex and Arriflex make, and what they used for depended entirely on the nature of the job. Bolex was the easier of the two to use, as being handheld, it only required one man to operate. Arriflex, although being the better of the two in terms of film quality, had its own problems, in that it required two people and a tripod to stand on, and any sound was recorded on Niagara tape machines. So, let's move on to one of the stories that would have been covered by one of these cameras. Back in 1965, British United Airways Flight 1030X crash-landed in Jersey Airport, killing 27 passengers. British United Airways extra passenger flight 1030X took off from Paris-Orly Airport in France en route to Jersey Airport, with 27 passengers and crew on board. Low cloud cover in Jersey made it hard for the pilot to see the runway, leading to an aborted first attempt. On the second landing attempt, the aircraft's starboard wing hit the outermost pole of the approach lighting system. The impact severed the starboard wing, with the aircraft rolling upside down and crashing into the ground. The flight deck of the aircraft was crushed and the cabin engulfed into flames. But it's not all bad news. One person survived, a French flight attendant. Now, we move on to another segment.
Hi, I'm Jack. Most of the equipment in the very early days was EMI kit. The studio cameras were turret cameras. The vision mixers and transmission desks and studio desks were also EMI kit. But all of this was soon replaced because in 1976 the station moved to colour. But now we turn to more disaster. Orine crashes into Guernsey. The Oron was one of the first jack-ups to operate in the North Seas in 1960s, a drilling jack built for trans-ocean voyages. In early 1978, the rig was loaded and welded onto a barge with the intention of relocating it from Rotterdam to Brazil via the English Channel. During a storm on the 1st of February 1978, the rig's tow line parted and forced the rig onto Guernsey's Grand Rock Bay, with 33 members still on board. Evacuation of the crew took place on the 2nd of February 1978, with 2 crew members intentionally extracted by lifeboats before conditions worsened and the use of helicopter was required. A further 24 crew were evacuated by helicopter before the air operations had to cease as a result of the rig spinning on the rocky stormy seas. 2 of the crew were also extracted by a form of zip line, utilising a lifebuoy, and 1 crew member was catapulted into the stormy seas before being rescued. The rig was later salvaged at the end of February 1978, after a month-long operation which involved pumping compressed air into the hull of the rig and pulling Orine free from the stranded barge beneath the rig. And now, back to Laurent.
Thanks, Jack. Now to the brighter side of the news. Jambo, the Gentle Giant. Not many of the younger audiences will remember Jambo, but please remember that Jambo is a special case, and this won't happen with other zoo gorillas, so please be cautious around the zoo. Jambo the gorilla shot to international news stardom overnight on August 31st, 1986, when 5-year-old Levin Lerrett fell into the gorilla enclosure and lost consciousness. Jambo stood guard over the boy when he was unconscious, placing himself between the boy and the other gorillas in what ethologists analyse as a protective gesture. When the boy regained consciousness and started to cry, Jambo and the other gorillas retreated in panic, and the silverback led them into the little house. But when the gate was closing, a younger gorilla named Hobbit got out, and an ambulance man and 2 keepers tried to rescue the boy while trying to keep calm. Most of the drama was shot on a home video by Brian LaLion and extensively photographed by bystanding zoo visitors. The publicity on major news channels and newspapers helped ease the public fears about potential violent nature of gorillas. It's sad to say, but Jambo is no longer with us, but a bronze statue was erected in Jersey Zoo in memory of the Gentle Giant. And now, over to Danny.
Hi, I'm Danny Gallion. One of the biggest news reports of the decade from Channel TV was the amazing event of the solar eclipse. Some of the best viewing conditions were to be had mid-channel. Many people who gathered on the island of Alderney also experienced the event. Alderney was in direct path of the first total solar eclipse visible in a part of the Channel Islands for more than 100 years. They occur in the rare moment when the moon passes between the Earth and the Sun, running the day into darkness. 6,000 people on the island that day, quadrupling its population. Even though it was cloudy skies and the spectators were unable to see the full effect, the event was still a very special thing to witness. The temperature fell and darkness came. It was predicted at 11:15 a.m. the last bit of sunlight disappeared and a wave of darkness swept across the sea from the northwest. A cloud came over last minute, however, it didn't stop the viewers from enjoying the unique and very rare view. Many people described it as a unique experience and also very strange. It was thought around 350 million people in Asia and Europe viewed the rare total solar eclipse that day. And now for a short interview with Rosemary Henry, a former employee of Channel Television, giving us her experiences of her time there. Hi Rosemary. In your opinion, how do you think technology has changed since then?
Beyond recognition. I mean, originally we started with clockwork cameras. You had to wind them up, that lasted for about 15 seconds, then you had to wind them up again, and they were very noisy and there was no sound. If you were doing an interview, then it was a bigger job, you had to take a huge camera out with all the affiliated equipment that went with it, and an interview would take quite a long time because you had to set up all this heavy equipment which ran on car batteries and various other bits and pieces.
What was the most interesting story you ever covered there?
That's a difficult one because in 33 years there's a lot of interesting stories, I suppose. Well, the royal visits were quite interesting to do. The occasional, what I call perks, little holiday features that we would go on, Concorde to New York, Orient Express London to Venice. That was quite interesting, to say the least, and very enjoyable. But there were quite a few. Some of the bigger programmes, like Highway, which was a national programme that put out on national TV. Harry Seacombe used to front that, and working with him was an absolute pleasure. He was a lovely man to work with.
Are there any dangers working in a job like this?
There can be, yes, because sometimes you put yourself in a measured amount of danger. You have to judge it yourself. Covering cliff rescues meant very often hanging over the side of a cliff to get the pictures. Or there was one, I suppose, the worst one, where my stomach hit my throat. It was, I thought I'd fallen out of an airplane. It was covering the Battle of Britain days parachute jumpers. And they put me in a harness so that I could lean out the side of the plane, or just on the entrance where they were jumping out, and take the boys as they were jumping out. We took off, the harness was on, we tested it and everything, and when it came to them jumping out, I got the signal to go to the jump door, leaned, expected to go so far, but it carried on, and they had played a little joke and lengthened my lead by another 7 or 8 inches, so I just kept going for another 7 or 8 inches, which meant I thought I was going out the plane without a parachute. But it didn't. Here to tell the tale.
So finally, how was it working for them? Would you recommend it for anyone looking for a job like this?
I think you have to be passionate about that sort of work. It's not the sort of job you think, well, I'll go and do my 9 till 5. You're on call 24/7, if they can find you, which today they can because of modern technology. And you have to be, it has to be really a passion you want to do, because you can be out at all hours, you can be covering some awful things. You can be on the high seas in a Force 8 going out to a shipwreck. Standing on the end of the pier in the freezing cold at 4 a.m. waiting for a ship to be brought in because it's on fire, things like that. That's when you wish you were working in a bank, nice and warm.
So you enjoyed your experiences?
Some, not all, but that applies to most jobs.
Thank you for your time, Rosemary.
It's a pleasure.
Now, for the final decade, we'll be presenting it all together.
Now, moving in the year 2000, we've seen more recent stories relating back to the health of people. In 2008, there was a sudden outbreak of bird flu.
This virus was expected to hit Guernsey, and it was estimated that over 50 million people would be wiped out from the bird flu worldwide. Thankfully, there was no deaths in Guernsey.
This was thanks to the injection that was handed out to firstly doctors, nurses and vets, in order to protect themselves and help others recover. Secondly, the injection was given to pregnant women and sufferers of asthma, and then people who had heart problems. At first, a vast majority of the island were unsure of the effects, but quickly became immune to the worry and eventually returned back to normal.
Well, this has been but a brief look into the history of channel television. We sincerely hope they will continue into the future. Maybe then we'll have holograms. But for now, all of us in the studio, we wish you a happy 50th anniversary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.